Hello everyone and welcome to 4KB Shorts Let's Learn with Kerbal Space Program version 0.90. Now for those who may be wondering, the last version of Kerbal Space Program was version 0.25, and the reason for the huge jump in numbers is because the game has officially moved out of alpha and into the beta stage of development. So it's now up to version 0.90.0.697, and if you look there in the corner it does say beta. As a matter of fact, the title of this particular stage of development is Beta Than Ever. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that's been added to the game. Huge overhaul, massive changes, so many things to talk about, and even a few things that may need to be shown as tutorials. Full-on Let's Learn tutorials, like huge sections. And so because of that, we're just going to go ahead and skip right into a profile that I have currently running to show off some of the most important changes and some of the new features, so you guys can get kind of a familiar tone with them before you yourself jump in and start doing weird things with the new system. So let's go ahead and just skip right over to the KSC, and we'll get this thing started. Alright everybody, here we are at the KSC, and as you can already tell, the buildings here are not as fantabulous as they once were. No, they have been shrunk. Many of the buildings are missing, and so you have these large plots of land with nothing really in them. These are the Tier 1 buildings. Now, the way the tiers work is as you earn money by flying spaceships and doing things, you then have the ability to upgrade your buildings through several tiers until you get to the maximum tier, which you will know as the familiar buildings that have been in the previous version of the KSC, which is the buildings that have all the features and do all the things without any limitations. Now, I could go through each and every building and show all the limitations, but I'm going to show one very specific one at this point, which is the astronaut complex. And if we take a right click on this, as you can see, we have astronaut complex's description. Below that, we have facility level 1, status fully operational, meaning it's not damaged. The upgrade cost is 70,000. And as you can see right now, it says capacity 5 active Kerbals. Kerbals can only disembark on Kerbin. Now, disembark means EVA. They can only EVA while on the surface of Kerbin. So if you were on the surface of Kerbin with a pod and you say, hey, I want to get out and walk around on the ground, you can. But if you're in orbit and you say, hey, Kerbal, get out, walk around, do a spacewalk, they can't. Because they're not trained to, they don't know how to, is how that works. So you have to upgrade the building. Now, if you want to upgrade a building, it's easy. If you have enough money, the number will be blue, and you mouse over it, and it says capacity, and this is the changes that will occur. Capacity 12 active Kerbals. Kerbals can perform EVAs. Kerbals on EVA can place flags. So now they have the ability to EVA, and then they can place flags as well. So that's how you get the flag option as well. And then there's a third level of the building, which I don't know what the third level is because I haven't unlocked the second level. So let's go ahead and head inside before we unlock anything, because there's a few things about Kerbals that we need to show. Now here's the thing about Kerbals. Jebediah, Bill, and Bob are already in the game, but as you can see, they're not leveled up. Now Jebediah is a pilot, Bill is an engineer, and Bob is a scientist. Now each Kerbal that you pull from the applicants will be randomly selected to be one of those things. There will be a scientist, an engineer, or a pilot. Depending on what they are, depends on what they can do. Scientists give bonus to science, recovered from a flight. Engineers can repair broken equipment, like if you land on a landing gear, or if you damage a piece of equipment with engine exhaust, or if you pop a tire on a rover, engineers can fix that. I'm pretty sure no other type of Kerbal can repair things, so you have to be careful about that. And of course, pilots are the most interesting one because they have the ability to operate SAS units, meaning that they are a living SAS unit. In the past, the way SAS worked is, of course, you just turn it on and it would lock your ship going in the direction you were going. Well, now SAS is a much bigger, more complex thing, and pilots know how to do that. There are some mechanical SAS as well, but those don't get good until way later. So if you really want your ship to fly straight, you're going to need a pilot. If you want to make sure that your ship is not broken, engineer. If you want additional science for doing scientific things in space, then you want a science officer. Now, a science officer can, of course, fly a ship, and so can an engineer, but a pilot does it better is how it works. Now, if we take a look at Jeb, as you can see, he has 1 star. The reason Jeb has 1 star is because he's gone on a few flights, and he has acquired some experience points, and those experience points have leveled him up by 1 level. Now, he can do some additional stuff, including he can point the ship in certain directions, and he does a little bit better job at flying automatically. And as he levels up, he'll be more and more capable of doing that. He'll be able to do more things, like being able to point. Like right now, he can do a stability assist. He can do prograde and retrograde hold, meaning that I can say point at the prograde or point at the retrograde, and he'll do that. Now later on, he can point at normal, anti-normal, and all the different areas. You know, all the different nodes and things he can point at, to the point where at maximum level, he'll even be able to point at our burn point. Like if we say we want to do a burn and it says, okay, you need to be pointing in this direction, you can tell Jeb to point at that, and he'll keep his nose right on that burn point to make sure that the burn goes smooth. So it's sort of like Mech Jeb, but in Kerbal form. It also gives you a reason to keep your Kerbals alive, because the last thing you want is you don't want like 3 pilots, 1 at level 5 and 2 at level 1, and your level 5 pilot dies in a horrible airplane explosion or something. That's just bad. So you don't want to waste your good pilots. And it's really interesting because that's the thing. Now your Kerbals exist and are alive and are useful, and they're not just people that sit inside of a pod and are completely out of it. And so that's the leveling up system. You get more experience as you do certain things. Flying on Kerbin gets you an experience point. Flying in orbit gets you an experience point. Planting flags gets you experience points. And then, of course, if you do those things on other planets, they get you more experience points, which means you can level up your Kerbal pretty fast as he's extremely adventurous. So let's go ahead and back out again. Now we're going to head into the VAB really quick, and inside the VAB we're going to show off a couple of things, including some new buttons and the new way that the system is set up. Now both the VAB and the SPH are set up in the same way, but there's a lot of stuff going on inside the VAB, so let's go ahead and get in there and we can show off some of the new buttons and all the new features and craziness that goes on in there. Alright, we are inside the VAB, and as you can see, there are some changes going on. Now, most of our buttons are exactly the same, but some of our buttons are missing. As a matter of fact, all of our buttons are missing. They have been moved to here. And this is a standard button setup that you guys are used to, except it's been moved to this side. So we have our pods, fuel tanks, engines, command and control, structural, aerodynamics, utility, and science. Now, I believe I have most of my parts. Yeah, most of the parts that I have are in aerodynamics, even if they're not unlocked. But this can demonstrate a couple of things that we can do. If you look up here, we now have name, mass, cost, and size. We can now sort by these options. So we can sort by name, that's default, up or down by name. Mass, highest or lowest by mass. Cost, highest and lowest, and then size, highest and lowest. And name is the standard. Name is how it's always been formatted, but you can change that if you want to make a light vessel, or a cheap vessel, or a large or small vessel. Very helpful in that regard. Now, that's one way to filter things out. Now there's a completely different way to filter things out, which changes the way these look. Now, if you click on this little guy up here where it says Enable Advanced Mode, it pops out this guy. We now have the ability to set by filter by function, module, resource, manufacturer, tech level, and then we have our subassemblies and custom category. So to take, for instance, well, this is function. This is exactly what we had before. Let's go ahead and say by module. Now we can say we have alternator. These have alternators. Command and control. These have command and control. Data transmission. Data transmission here. Keep going down. We say fuel line. Well, I don't have a fuel line unlocked, but there would be a fuel line in there. If we take a look at lifting surface, these are objects that have lifting surface attached to them. If we go even further down, we can say, let's see, I know there's a wing thing here somewhere. Yeah, you can click and drag, which is really nice because it gets really long. We have winglets, so now we can adjust by winglets. So you can filter by what they do. We have parachutes, you have landing legs, grappling nodes, generator, all this stuff, all this wonderful stuff. And of course you can filter that by resource, what it uses. It says electric charge, intake air, liquid fuel, monopropellant, oxidizer, solid fuel, and xenon gas. You can also go by manufacturer. Say for instance, for some odd reason you want to make a ship made only of parts from one manufacturer, you can absolutely do that if you really feel like it. I don't know if that's exactly possible, but if it is, there it is. I think this is really well used for mods because most modders will have a specific name for their creations. And so if you're looking for a certain type of mod part, you'd most likely want to filter by name, by like the construction's name. So you can say that this modder constructed, if it's made by Bobcat or somebody else, they'll have the same name on it. So you can say, oh, I'll filter by that. You also have tech level. So you can make cheap ships, or you can make really hardcore expensive ships, completely up to you. And then of course you have your sub-assemblies, which works exactly the same as before. So you can add a custom subcategory here. So you have all sub-assemblies, custom subcategory, which means you can add, if you click on there, you can get an icon and everything. You can add, you can say like, you know, we can add an airplane icon, and you can say planes, so that you know that it's all planes all the time. You accept that, and now you have planes. You can click on planes, you can click on all subassemblies, which is helpful. And of course, like I said, it works exactly the same. You just drop your subassembly here and you're good to go. Now with that, you can also add custom categories. Again, you get your custom categories here, and if we say, for instance, I want all the things, we'll just use the airplane icon again because it's extremely recognizable, even though my words aren't. We can say airplanes, except, and now we can put all sorts of things in here that are airplanes. Now I'm pretty sure we can do that by custom category drop zone. Drag and drop a part here to save it to the subcategory, no part selected. So to do that, we would say we have a fuselage here, right? So then we go down to our airplanes and we just grab, there you go, and then boom, see? Now it's a part in our custom category. So we would have to do that with every single part that we'd want to use to build an airplane, but once it's set up, it's yours, completely yours, and you don't have to do anything really weird or different with it. Now, along with that, we'll go ahead and keep this out of the way. Along with that, what we can do is we'll go back to the classic mode, because that's what I'm used to. Let's go ahead and build a little bit of a ship. Nothing too super spectacular, but if you look in the top left-hand corner, you're going to see some buttons there, and you're going to be like, what are those buttons? Well, let's go ahead and show you. So we're going to put some stuff here, nothing too spectacular, just a teeny tiny ship with an engine, fuel line, well, a fuel tank, excuse me, and a parachute. Boom. Now, the way this works is this is place. That's the standard mode, which means you pick up an object and then you place that object. Now we have offset. Now offset gives you some really fun features. So let's go ahead and click a part to offset. We'll click our parachute to offset, and look at that. We now have some nodes. So if we wanted to offset a part, we can now offset a part. Now it may look silly doing that, but basically what this allows you to do is it allows you to put a part in a place, like attach it to the body in a place where you know it will attach, and then move it around. So, you know, if you wanted to go slightly higher, slightly lower, you don't like where it sits, you don't like how it combines, you can move it around, but the connection point is still the same on the ship. I don't know if parts really, yeah, we can't go any higher than this, but we can go right and left with it. So I don't know if it still works, because I haven't really tested the offset outside, but I'm pretty sure it'll still work even if you offset it in a really weird place like this. If you want to do that, that's perfectly up to you. But it comes down to design. All these are about design. Now, so that's our offset, so we can offset from its connection point. We connect it, then we offset it. The next thing we can do is we can rotate it. Now, rotating it is exactly like offset. You just turn it like so. And it allows you to basically put this in a place where you want it to be. And it has, if you look, it has little clicks so that it's not just a perfect slide. You can actually click it to be at certain angles, which is really helpful. But this is mostly for design is what this is for. Rather than functionality, it's mostly for design, because what you want is just, you want to make a really pretty spaceship, but that piece just isn't going where you want it to, that one's not at the right angle, that one it connects to the wrong place, and you wish it would just connect a little bit lower or a little bit higher, and that's how you do that. That's how you fix that. And that's combined with a new feature, which is really interesting. We can show it off by doing this, which is clipping. Clipping is now permanent. Clipping is not something you have to turn on or off. It is something that the game will allow you to do all the time now without any kind of concern. And the reason for that is because most people use clipping when they want to build a spaceship that may or may not function. Meaning that the spaceship works, but they had to put some parts in a weird place, or something just doesn't fit right, and they have to slide them together. Or you want to make a very complex looking aircraft, and you have to have the wings sliding inside of each other. Well, there used to be a cheat where you could say, I want to be able to make parts clip in the VAB and the SPH. Well, that's been permanently turned on, and it's made it slightly less buggy, which is extremely helpful. So it's like slightly less buggy, because now you can make parts clip without having to worry about bugging out the game or things going wrong. You'll still have those issues where it can sometimes look ugly, or if a part is clipped on top of another part and shows through, it will have that rendering problem where it might flicker a little bit now and again. But that's just something you have to cope with. But now you can, as you can see, you can clip parts inside of each other without any kind of issue or telling you can't connect that there, or that doesn't go there because something's in the way. You never have to worry about that again. Now, the fourth button, now that we're done talking about all that, the fourth button is a very interesting button. Now, this selects the root part. Say, for instance, that your root part is your command pod, because that's what you put down first. You put down the command pod. So you click the command pod, you can move it around. That's your root part. Now, if you click any other part, it detaches from the root part and moves it around. What we can do now is we can click root part, and then select our new root part. We're going to say this part. Now watch this. Oop. Done. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I'm doing that wrong. You have to select this part, and then this part. There it is. Now this is our new root part. So you select the original root part and then the new root part, and now this is our root part. So if we say, oh, I don't like that command pod, but I built this huge rocket underneath it. What do? I don't want to do a sub-assembly because then all my piping and everything won't work properly, or, you know, it's slow and it's buggy because this thing is ginormous. How do I do that? You change your root part, and you can just take your top off, and done. And if you want to, you can change your root part back. And done. Now we have a new root part, see? So you can now change your root part without having to change the whole of the rocket that you built underneath, or reload, or do anything insane like that. Now, there is a new button down here at the right that's extremely important too. It's the craft stats button. It has the part number, or part count, mass, size, and height, weight, width, and length. Excuse me, height, width, and length. The reason for these numbers is because you can see they have a minimum maximum. Parts 3 out of 30, mass 4.8 tons out of 18 tons, and then size is 5.9, or 20 meters, 15 meters, 15 meters. That's a combination of limitations between the VAB, part count, and size, as well as the launch pad, which comes down to mass and size. Each one can only carry so much. So a VAB, in this case this VAB, can only carry a rocket or build a rocket up to 30 parts. And the launch pad can only hold a rocket up to 18 tons. Now, once the two facilities are upgraded, those numbers increase to a higher tier, and then at maximum level, it's unlimited. But early on in the game, you will have limitations which won't allow you to launch ships that are too complicated, or too heavy, or too wide, or too tall. And those numbers are down here, and if you go over, this button will turn orange. If you add too many parts or make it too heavy. Let's see if we can make this thing super mega heavy. And the easiest way I know how to do that is to, well, yeah, I don't have that part purchased. So the easiest way to do that is to add a ton of SRBs, or in this case, several tons of SRBs. So as you can see, 27.4 tons out of 18 tons means it's way too heavy, and our button is orange. The little orange button down there says we can't do it. No more can we go that way. So you have to make sure that your part count is low enough and your tonnage is low enough in order to make it. And it may seem difficult to do that, but it's not as difficult as you might think. You may have to take some of your tried and true designs and cut them down, or you may have to actually dump them and, you know, do it differently. But it makes it for a lot of fun because you do have to change things around. So you may find it difficult. Again, this is all new and it's going to be very difficult to adjust, but it's all very wonderful. Alright, now I think I've covered most everything in here. Oh, nope, there is one additional thing that I should cover for everybody. Now, for anybody who's used to the editor extensions mod, you will know what this is already, but it has been added to stock. Now, if you look down there in the corner, as it says, we have 8, so we can put 8 of these on here. Well, what if we don't want 8? What if we want 2? But we don't just want to. What if we want to build like a rover on top of a rocket ship? Well, it's easier to build a rover in the SPH than it is to build it here in the VAB and then port it over, but even that gets complicated. Well, what you can do is you can press the R button. Now the R button goes for mirror mode or for radial. Now radial looks like this, right? And goes around. What does mirror mode do? Mirror mode. Mirror mode it basically changes the VAB and the SPH into one or the other. So you can create mirrored object like you would in the VAB right here in the SPH, or you can create rotational objects in the SPH like you would in the VAB. So you can make very interesting, very different spacecraft or aircraft with the R button. You press R and it goes from mirror to radial and back to mirror. And that's how that works. And it works wonderfully. It works wonderfully. I have yet to find any really major bugs with it that cause any issue. I haven't really had a chance to use it because, as I said, it's something that I would probably use for rovers. But if you want to build X-Wings or something strange like that, and the radial style doesn't work in the SPH or the VAB, whichever one you're in, you can just switch instantly back and forth. And it doesn't affect other parts. So say for instance we're now on radial, and we just put these on as mirror, but now we want radial, say, oh, I don't know, let's find a part, maybe a wing. So we'll take a wing and we'll say, now we want 4 wings for whatever reason. Oh, come on. There it is, back to radial. And now you have 4 wings. So we added these ones as mirrored, and we added these 4 as radial, and the ship doesn't care. It is perfectly fine with either one. And so you can build really interesting ships by being able to switch between one or the other. Alright, now I believe there's a couple more things we need to check out, including the new contract system. That's right, well, the contract system is the same, but some of the things have changed. So let's head over to the administration building. We'll show off some of the different contracts that we can get now that it's gotten more complex, and we're going to need more science and more money and more everything. So I'll see you guys over there. Alright everybody, here we are at the administration complex. Now I want to give you a heads up and say that the administration complex has been upgraded by 1 tier. The original amount of active contracts is 2. After an upgrade you get a maximum number of 7. So I did that in order to show off a few more contracts and be able to progress a lot more quickly when it comes to science and income and reputation. Now, I've done a few contracts in the past, but there's a couple of contracts that are currently listed that I want to show you that are different from your standard test a part or fly to a place. Now, I don't have the major in-depth contracts yet, so I can't show you those, and I really wish I could, but they get really, really deep. And these are fine print contracts. And fine print contracts, what they do is they tell you to go to a place, or they tell you to do a thing at a place. And some of these are like this one, perform visual surveys of Kerbal. So if we take a look at this one, if you look down at the objectives and skip all the rest, the objectives are take an EVA report on the surface at sector XKIVJC. And then after that, it's take a crew report from above 18,600 meters near Rose's anomaly. And then below that, it says take a crew report from above 17,300 meters near area SECF. Now you're like, what are these things? Where do I find these things? Well, I don't even understand. I'll show you exactly how to find them and where in just a moment. But what we're going to do is, if you take a look at this, these are very interesting contracts because this is a simple one. This is a simple one? Yeah, this is a simple one. Now, I have some that are active. I actually have 2, where I have one which is take a crew report from below 18,200 meters near Dursey's Passage, and then take a crew report from below 18,200 meters near Werner's Tract. Now, those are 2 that I have currently on, and then the ones that are currently available. Now, those get very complex, including go to a specific orbit. I believe that one is position a satellite in a specific orbit of Minmus. So we have to, if we took this one, we would have to take a satellite. It has to be a new unmanned probe, and it has to be built after the contract is accepted. Its apoapsis is 932,215 meters. Periapsis 192,822 meters. Inclination 55.5 degrees. Longitudinal ascending node 147.9, and argument of periapsis 188.1. That's extremely complicated. Extremely complicated. I have no idea what any of that means. But if we take a look, there should be another one. I believe we have another one around here. Here it is. Position a satellite in a Colonia orbit around Kerbal. And this is very, very similar. It's the same thing. Slightly different orbit. A very specifically named orbit with very specific guidelines here. Now, I tell you this one because, again, I'll be showing you exactly how to find these things, and you do that over in the tracking station. But they get more complex than this in the fact that there are some where you have to grab asteroids and bring them into certain orbits. There are ones where you have to build a base on certain planets. There are ones where you have to build space stations around certain planets, and there are ones where you have to build bases on asteroids. So you now have contractual reasons to do things like that. You don't just do them because I just feel like building an asteroid base. Now you can do it and get paid for it. Everyone's ultimate dream, right? And so that's what these contracts are for. These are the fine print contracts, and these completely overhaul the way the whole rest of the game plays, because now things that you didn't use before are being used. As a matter of fact, even for this Let's Learn to build up to get here to show off some of these things, I didn't buy fuel lines and did buy airplane parts. I've never done that before. I've never done that before. I'll always buy fuel lines because fuel lines get me to other planets. But now I have a reason to stay on this planet. Now I have a reason to stay on Kerbin. I can fly around and do visual observations and get additional income in order to do things like fly to the moon or unlock parts or things like that. So now I have those as an option. So this completely overhauls the whole way the game plays, if only because now you can look at it and say, well, I want to fly to this area and do a visual survey, but I can't do it with a rocket. You should do it with an airplane now. You have to build an airplane. Or you say, hey, I want to build a space station. And now you have a reason to build a space station. So let's head over to the tracking station. We're going to show off how you find out where these things need to be. And then we're going to do a quick tutorial on how to get to one of these things, because there's some interesting features that I didn't find out until very recently when I was trying to finish one of these contracts, which will make your life a lot easier when it comes to doing it. So let's head over to the tracking station. All right, everyone, and here we are at the tracking station. No, that isn't a bug. That is the Colnea orbit that we would need to put a satellite in. That's it right there. It's showing us the orbit. I'm pretty sure if we go to Minmus, it will show us an orbit around that as well. Let's go ahead and yep. So these are the orbits that it would want us to put those satellites in. So if we were to accept those contracts, these are the orbits it wants us to put those satellites in. So all we'd have to do is we just have to match orbits. Now that may seem a little bit cheap, but honestly, all that information that it told me, I couldn't work that out manually. Having a line here that shows me what I'm supposed to do, that's a lot easier. That is a lot easier. And so this is Minmus Apoapsis 932 by 215 meters, Agency Kerbin World First Records Keeping Society. So that's telling you that this is a contractual orbit. Now, we didn't accept the contract, so we're not required to do this, but it's here. Now, if we said we don't want that contract and canceled it, this would disappear. So let's go ahead and head back to Kerbin, and here it is. So we have that same orbital path here for that other contract. Now, down near the ground, with the survey info, we have these little guys. Now, these are location Jersey's Passage. We have Werner's Tract, Rose's Anomaly, Sector XKIVJC, and Area SECF. And they're just little notes. They're just little pointers on the map that show you where you'd have to do these things. So before you accept a contract, you can come to the tracking station and say, well, I have plane parts that can get me, you know, out into the ocean a little bit. But it can't get me all the way across the globe. So if you say, I don't really want to accept that contract and have to cancel it or have it taking up a space that I could use for something else if it's way out here and I can't get to it. So you can just come to the tracking station. You can look. You'd be like, is that going to be really hard for me to do? Yeah, I'll wait to do that one. And then that's about it. That's all it is. It's just these little icons here that tell you where you need to do these things and what you need to do. So this one right here, as you can see, I think that's like 2 little feet. So that's where you have to put boots on the ground. These are observations. As you can see, it's a little clipboard and pen, and I believe that's an observation too, but it's a slightly different color. We will be doing one of these. As a matter of fact, I believe we'll be doing Werner's Tract because it's really close. And I'll be showing you, again, some of the things that you can do in order to make this a lot easier for you to figure out. So we're going to start doing that because I believe there's nothing else here that we really need to show off. Everything else is basically the same. Alright everybody, here we are on the runway. Now we're going to go ahead and throttle up, and while we throttle up, I'm going to just talk a little bit. As you can see, we are going to go to Werner's Tract, so we need to take a crew report from below 18,200 meters near Werner's Tract. Now I'm not going to show the full flight because it is going to take a little while, but I will show you a couple of things when we take off, and then we'll pop back as soon as we get close enough for a couple other things to happen. So it looks like we're all geared up, so we're going to go. So let's go ahead and fly. Now if you look right there on the lower left when I turned on our SAS unit, we now have some new icons. Now this will only appear if you have a Kerbal on board who is capable of performing automated actions of flight, i.e. a pilot who is level 1 or higher. Or level 2 or higher. 1 star or higher, basically. And what this Kerbal, Jebediah, can do is he can do stability assist. That's standard for any Kerbal who's a pilot. You also have prograde and retrograde. Now if we were to click this, basically what would happen is Jebediah would do a nosedive. But we're going to show it here because he'll try to keep us on our prograde when we click this. So yes, he's holding prograde. Or trying to hold prograde. It's a little bit jittery, but it works. So now he's trying to hold prograde. Now if we do retrograde, he will try to flip the plane around. Because that's his job. That's what he'll be able to do. Now we have normal, anti-normal. I don't remember what these two are called. Left and right, basically. And then target, towards target. So if you have a target that you want to dock with, that's towards target. And then away from target. And that's what those are. And I believe This one is towards your burn node. So we'll go back to stability assist because he's rocking this thing. Now, we need to head over to Werner's Tract, and I don't know where it's at. I don't know, you know, we can check our map. I don't know where it's at. Well, what's really great is if we click on our map, we're going to head here, right? Werner's Tract, exactly. We left click on it. Activate navigation. Navigation set to Werner's Tract. Now, if we go back to our nav ball, look at that. Werner's Tract is in this direction. It's right over here. So now we can point our airplane right towards that. It doesn't have to be exact. You just have to be kind of over it or in the same direction as it. And now we're heading in the exact direction that we need to go towards Werner's Tract. And you can do that with any node that you have active. And you can say, you know, we can do it like this. Activate navigation and navigation set to Dersey's Passage. Now, as you can see, you can only have one at a time. But you now have the ability to just basically click, activate, and now you can point your nose in the right direction. So if you need to know where to go to find a thing, if it's on the other side of a planet, if it is out of your line of sight, if it's just in an area, in a place that it's like it's just over there, and I don't know which way to go exactly. Now you can click it, and it'll point it. Now, we have to do a survey below 18,900 meters. That part's easy. We just have to be below that number here. But it says near Werner's Tract. Well, what's near Werner's Tract? Well, we'll show you. So I'm going to cut in order to just bypass the flight point plan. Anyway, I'm gonna bypass the majority of the flight, and we'll come back as soon as we're near Werner's Tract. All right, everybody, here we are at Werner's Tract. Now we need to do a crew report below 18,200 meters, but we can't do it yet. And the reason why is because we haven't actually reached Werner's Tract. Now you say, well, how do you know we haven't reached Werner's Tract? Well, we get a little bit of information when we do. And it should pop up here in just a moment, I'm hoping, because we're getting really close to the edge of the water. Now, again, those little icons on the map aren't exactly 100%. They're not perfect. So, well, these ones point you in the exact right direction, but the ones on the map aren't perfect. There it is. You are entering Werner's Tract. So now we're in Werner's Tract. We're below the required time frame, and as you can see, our icon is blinking, meaning we're exactly where we need to be. We click Crew Report. The heat rising from the sand causes the desert to move and shimmer. So we get desert science. Keep that data, and we completed our contract. Let's try that again. I'm trying to right-click. The results are fantastic. We know so much more about Kerbin. We are forwarding funds now. So we got $20,000. We're flying over here and doing a crew report. Pretty basic stuff. So that is how you complete one of the visual contracts. Now, other ones are different. Other one, like I said, I have not yet gained access to some of the more complex ones, such as build a base on, plant a flag on, capture an asteroid in, so on and so forth. But as long as you match either, I'm hoping, relatively close, or in some cases, according to the satellite positioning systems, exactly the numbers that they give you, then you're perfectly fine. But that's how you can tell whether or not you've entered the zone you need to be in, is that it will tell you that you have entered the zone. And then, of course, when you're tracking that as navigation, it'll blink on your nav ball. So you know you're going. Now, we could fly all the way back to base, but we're not going to bother doing that. Instead, we're going to go ahead and switch over to a sandbox mode so we can see some of the brand new parts and discuss a couple of changes that have occurred in regards to this new system down here and Jebediah and Kerbals in general. And so I'll see you guys. Well, I'll see you guys at the spaceplane hangar to check out the new parts. So I'll see you guys there. Alright, everybody, here we are in the spaceplane hangar. And before we get started with the new parts and components, I want to go ahead and talk about pilots versus probe bodies. And the reason I want to throw this out there is because it's semi-important, and at the same time, it's not really something that can easily be covered in the game. And so I want to point it out in case there's some confusion, because when I ran into it, I was extremely confused. Until I looked up a little bit of extra information, I was like, oh, that's the problem. So, Kerbals level up when they're pilots, and as we've seen, there's a little thing on the left that says you can go prograde and retrograde and aim towards target and aim away from target and aim towards burn marker and so on and so forth. And all those fun little buttons, and you think to yourself, can I do that with probe bodies? Yes, but much like Kerbals, probe bodies level up. They do, they level up. They don't level up themselves, but each tier of probe body is slightly better than the last one. So if you take, for instance, the Staputnik Mark 1, which is the first probe body you're going to get your hands on. Right click and we look at it, it is a command pod and it has electric charge. And that's it. It has no SAS unit installed, and as a matter of fact, if you tried to fly it and press T, you'd get a warning saying there's no pilot, no SAS unit, we cannot do this. And so you have to fly the ship attached to this manually. And there's no way to even stop it from flopping about. If you're not controlling it the entire time, it's going to roll over, it's going to flip, it's going to go off course, because it has no SAS. Now, you may think to yourself, well, what if we take the Pro body, and then we can go ahead and stick an SAS unit on there, right? Well, they don't work like that anymore. This is no longer considered an SAS unit. It's now considered a reaction wheel. That's it. They're just reaction wheels. They add additional force to an SAS unit. Like if a pilot is in control, the reaction wheel will add the ability for the pilot to resist outside forces, keep the ship straight, hold it in position, that kind of thing. But it won't add SAS if none was there to begin with. So this Pro body right here, even with this reaction wheel, would be more controllable, but it would not be more stable, and you still could not activate SAS. But if we go back and we take a look at the other units, if we take a look at the upgraded units, we have a couple other ones here. Let's see. We have this one right here. Now, if you look along the list there, it says SAS, Stability Assist. The Probodobodyne Octo has Stability Assist, which is the ability to press T, have your SAS enabled, and have your ship fly as much as it can in a straight line without any outside influence. We go up from there, we have the Probodobodyne Hex, which has Stability Assist, Prograde, Retrograde Hold, which is the same as a level 1 Kerbal, or as we saw as Jebediah was, level 1 or 1 star. We head over to the Probodobodyne Octo 2, and it has Stability Assist, Prograde, Retrograde Hold, Radial, Normal, and Attitude Hold. So it'll try to hold Attitude, it'll also try to hold Radial, as well as hold Normal. And then we keep going up, and these two, the remote guidance unit, actually they're both remote guidance units, but I think one is smaller than the other one, have a full SAS capability, which includes maneuver node, target tracking, so on and so forth. So that's a full 5-star Kerbal worth of design right there. So that's really, really important, and I wanted to point that out because I got majorly confused when I stuck an SAS unit on the Pro body, and the Pro body still told me, you don't have an SAS on here because it's not stability, it's just a reaction wheel. So very important to point that out for everybody. Now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at some of those Mark III parts. So we're going to go ahead and start with the Mark III cockpit, which of course looks exactly like the shuttle cockpit. Isn't that nice? Very pretty, very beautiful. Downside, no internals. Currently, there are no internals for this, so the pretty is only on the outside. You can, however, turn on the lights, which make it look even prettier. Now, along with that, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these other parts. We have many adapters. Many adapters for this. We also have your fuel tanks of standard size, of ginormous size, and of teeny tiny size. We also have rocket fuel, which are the same things, mini rocket fuel size, as well as a monopropellant tank. And a gigantic rocket size. so many sizes of rockets. We also have some adapters. The adapters are great because they allow you to attach to 2.5 meter and 3 meter parts as you see fit, which help you if you want to attach this to the top of a rocket, which you will, because this thing does not like to fly as an airplane. A lot of people will want to build a space plane out of it. And just so you know, when you want to build a space plane, if you use just say this component right here for fuel, 5,000 units of liquid fuel. You want to go for the bigger one, 10,000 units of liquid fuel. So there is a lot of fuel in these things. They are not light. You can drain some of the tanks, which does help a little bit, but they are heavy. So if you can build a plane that flies, which you can build one that can go basically all the way around Kerbin. You can circumnavigate the entire globe if you'd like. Now we do have, again, some more adapters, including Mark III to Mark II adapter, Mark III to size 3 adapter, so you can make a huge rocket, all that. Now, that's all of our fuel tanks and adapters. By the way, all the adapters are also fuel tanks. There are no parts in this entire section that don't have fuel of some kind in them, which is insane, but also helpful. Now, to get the rest of your parts, you do have to go down to utility, and those are located here. We have our small cargo bay, medium cargo bay, and then the longest cargo bay you'll probably ever need ever. So you can basically fit a train in here if you really felt like it. They do, of course, open and close, both internally and externally, so you can close them up without too big of a problem. Well, biggest problem being that you have to get your menu inside the screen. There you go. So giant hangar bays, although that is really cool to watch. Alright, and then on top of that one, you also have the Mark III passenger module. Again, unfortunately, no internals for this, but if you turn on the lights, it is still pretty. So you now have the ability to have Kerbals climb inside here, as well as here, and be passengers. And I believe this thing can hold up to 6 Kerbals for that one, isn't it? Ooh, a lot more Kerbals. Yeah, you can hold a ton of Kerbals in that passenger section. Probably more than really should be able to fit in there. As a matter of fact, if we take a look, it can hold 16 Kerbals. That's 8 Kerbals per side, or 2 Kerbals per window. Well, that would make sense, I suppose, if you had dual seats. So it is a very large passenger liner. I don't know. I don't know. But hey, there's no internals. You can't tell, right? So you do have the passenger compartment. I don't think that there's a specific docking unit for this. There's no specific docking unit. The only one, of course, is the Mark II Clampatron. So there is no current docking unit for this. So you'll have to build something for docking if you want to attach to a space station or something like that. You could, of course, just, take a thing and then stick a docking port to the side of it, if you felt like doing that. But whatever works for you. There's many ways to do it, of course. Now, again, these things don't like to fly, but they can fly. I have taken the liberty of building a Mark III airplane, which, for lack of a better option, we will demonstrate so we can see how how well these things fly. So I'm going to see you out there on the runway to show off how a Mark III plane flies when you don't build planes very well. Alright everyone, here we are on the runway with the Zoomer. What we're calling it. We're calling this little guy the Zoomer. Now, as I said before, the Mark III parts are extremely heavy. And as you can see, we have, how many is this? 7 engines? 7 engines currently being used to push this thing down the runway. Now, if you take a look at our speed, we're not going to get much higher than about 100 meters per second. That's it. We should be able to get to the end of the runway. Now, we can't take off. There's, like, no way to take off at this point. Basically, I just tested this thing to make sure it still worked. And we basically have to just throw ourselves off the end of the runway and then pull up. And then just not hit the ground. Yeah. Luckily, the ground goes down at the end of the runway rather than up, because otherwise we'd have a major issue. So there it is. So you are, in fact, able to build a decent airplane, a very decent airplane out of the Mark III parts. I just would not expect it to be an easy task. If you're really good at building space planes or airplanes, then good luck, because I'm not, and I've gotten this thing off the ground, but that's about it. I wouldn't trust it for much more than that. Now, I have landed it. It can land, but the problem with this big plane, regardless of its actual flight design, is that it is heavy. Massively heavy, especially for these little itty-bitty landing gear. And landing it requires you to come in very, very, very slow. And that's where the big problem comes in, is because if that, as of course the slower you go, the more likely you are to crash straight down. And so you have to come in slow and kind of low at the same time. It's an odd balance. I've only been able to land it once. Every other time it has come in, and I'm not even going to try it for the runway. But it has come in, and basically you hit too hard on the back wheels, and the plane collapses in on itself. It just completely falls apart, but just because of the sheer weight of all the parts involved. Let's go ahead and slow down a little bit more. So we kind of want to drop. We don't want to nose down. We just kind of want to drop out of the air. And I think the lowest speed that I really want to land this thing at is about, might be a little bit too high. I think the last time I landed it successfully, we were doing about 70-ish. Yeah, we might be coming in a little bit too high. So we're going to attempt a landing. It's probably going to explode. It usually does, but we're going to attempt a landing anyway. Yeah, we're coming a little bit fast on this one. Alright. We don't want to knock our tail off either. That's going to be fun if we do that. Alright. So it flies really well. They glide really well too, honestly. I did build one before that did really well as a glider, but unfortunately I lost that design, so... And there it is. So yeah. You do end up with problems like that. So even at a really, really, really slow speed, there's a chance you can break your plane completely apart. But hey, it's always great to end on an explosion, right? So that's the most basic of all the parts and pieces as it pertains to Kerbal Space Program version 0.90, beta than ever. As we watch our wings fly into the distance. There will be, of course, questions. There's a lot more stuff to learn than what I showed here. I just showed the very, very basics. But I hope I covered enough stuff to where people can get in there, feel familiar, and if nothing else, if they, if you got confused and you came here and you found it interesting, I hope that's really helpful for you. But for now, we're going to go ahead and stop here. So once again, I would like to thank you all very much for joining me 4 kilobytes short on this Let's Learn with Kerbal Space Program's version 0.90. And I will see you guys next video.